Okay. All right. Today is September 12th, Oscoda Township regular board meeting. We're calling to order at 7:03 p.m. Is my microphone on? Yes. Sure it is. I just wasn't talking into it. Okay. So we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll start with roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings, absent. Ms. McGuire?
Here.
Mr. Spencer?
Here.
Mr. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Sutton here. Mr. Wusterbarth absent. Ms. Richards?
Here. Is there any agenda additions this evening? No. Sorry, I keep hearing like voices more than normal, so that's why I'm looking around.
No from me.
Okay. All right, we have two public presentations this evening. The first public presentation is FMV Engineering, which is our utility operator. They're going to be doing a PFAS presentation. If you could please come to the podium.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Am I close enough? Okay. All right, so as you mentioned, we're going to discuss the Oscoda wastewater treatment plant PFAS investigation. So if we can go to the next slide. Just a couple things that we're going to cover is background and history, results to date, next steps, and then there'll be time for questions. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background, and I'm sure most of you here, especially at the board level and folks in the audience, know a little bit about PFAS and the fact that the wastewater treatment plant is located on the former Air Force Base site, and there's a lot of PFAS contamination due to what's called AFFF, the aqueous film forming firefighting foam. AFFF is easier to say than all of that. So we're just going to focus mostly on, the investigation was mostly focused on trying to decide or to determine where PFAS was coming into the wastewater treatment lagoon still, if it's legacy from the area contamination or if it's ongoing discharges from industrial activity that's still in operation. But before we get into the results from that, a little bit of how we got there is Eagle staff actually did some sampling out at the wastewater treatment plant in November of 2018, and they found elevated PFOS, which is a specific type of PFAS. That's the one that is of most concern to human health and aquatic life. And that was found in the wastewater treatment plant effluent at levels above the water quality standard, which is 12 parts per trillion. The average has been around 80 parts per trillion in the effluent. So back in 2019, Eagle issued a compliance communication letter to the wastewater treatment plant in the township, basically just showing that there were some additional steps they wanted the township to take to identify if there's any sources of PFAS, if it's mostly just legacy from the contaminated groundwater, or if there's continued active sources that need to be reduced. And to develop a monitoring plan to go out and actually collect samples within the collection system for the sanitary sewer. And then to submit an interim and a summary report to Eagle, which then morphed into ongoing 6-month status reports to Eagle. And then once that was done, work on a plan to reduce and eliminate sources of PFAS and PFOA. And then continue to do source monitoring and source reduction where possible. So back in April 2019, the township started doing monthly sampling out at the treatment plant site, doing influent and effluent sampling on a monthly basis and submitting that to the state. And then they also requested that the township take a sample of the actual sludge that gets accumulated in the lagoons, and that was also done. So next slide, please. So basically, if you're not familiar, you've probably seen this image or something similar, but this is one from the state of Michigan, Eagle, that kind of shows the groundwater PFAS plume. And you can see if you're not familiar with it, but the wastewater treatment plant sits kind of right near that dark purple splotch south of the runway. So kind of an interesting location for sure with regards to where the contamination is and how it might be getting to the plant. So next slide. And this is another image that Eagle put together. It's a map that shows some of their groundwater samples are the circles, and then the squares, I know it's hard to see, the squares are residential wells that they also sampled back in 2019. So you can see just some more documentation from the state that shows where the PFAS contamination is at the former Air Force Base site. Next slide. And this one's just an updated one from 2021 that shows similar results that AECOM did for the state of Michigan. So next slide. So what have we done since then? Well, since then, we did a source screening survey. We sent a survey out to all of the non-domestic sanitary survey users in the township system. And they had to submit information about what are they currently using, what kind of chemicals do they have on site, are they doing any processing that could potentially have PFAS in it, so anything like metal finishing or things like that. And that was sent to all of the non-domestic users, and we found that there might be 2 in the sewer system that could potentially be discharging PFAS to the system. Coletta Air, which is actually located in a number of the hangars at the former Air Force Base site, and then Cooper Standard. So what we did next was to collect samples from both of those locations, and Cooper Standard was non-detect. That means they didn't have any detectable PFAS compounds in their discharge. And Coletta is interesting because they have multiple discharge locations into the sanitary sewer. So we collected one initially from a trench drain inside one of the hangars, and it had some detectable levels of PFAS. So that kind of spawned a more detailed investigation where we came up and we met with the folks at Coletta, their environmental compliance person, and we walked around and we actually did more sampling throughout the whole former Air Force Base site, and we'll go through those results here in more detail. But what we also did was kind of develop a monitoring plan that Eagle wanted us to do, which was to not just focus on the former Air Force Base site, but to look at the whole system and see if there's areas of PFAS getting into the wastewater treatment collection system, sanitary sewer. So we divided the collection system into some areas, and there's a map on the next slide that shows them, but the former Air Force Base was a obvious area we wanted to collect from. Then there's also a light industrial area from Oscoda Township that discharges to the collection system. And then there's some residential areas in Oscoda Township, as well as residential and commercial areas from the downtown area and areas outside of the Air Force Base. So we collected wastewater samples at a number of locations in the winter of 2020, and again in the winter of 2021. We also did it in spring of 2021 and in fall of 2021 to try to get a good representation of different kinds of weather events, different kinds of groundwater in the area. And while that was going on, we continued to collect samples at the wastewater treatment plant in both the influent and effluent for all of the PFAS compounds. And we also took a sludge sample from each lagoon. Next slide. So here's that map that kind of shows, it's color-coded, so you can kind of see the different areas, how we divided up the collection system. In red, you've got the Air Force Base in the northwest area. Yellow, you've got kind of the area south of the, real Air Force Base area. In green, you've got more of the commercial, US 23 area. Purple is the Oscoda area, the industrial part. And then the blue at the very south end is where Oscoda's kind of residential comes in. So next slide. Oh man, it's kind of hard to see that. I apologize. But I think the board members have printed copies, so you'll have that for reference. But you can see here that if you look at, sorry, I'm trying to get my bearings. Pump station 16, which is at the very south edge of the red area, that's where all of the kind of immediate former Air Force Base area discharges to that lift station, and we collected a sample from there, and that had PFOS at 456 parts per trillion. And then there were a little bit of detectable numbers throughout many of the other locations. Interestingly enough, Oscoda Township lift station or discharge location had a 98.6 PFAS parts per trillion number, which was kind of surprising to me. I wasn't too surprised by the Air Force Base lift station number. In fact, I thought it might be higher than that. But it was our first round of sampling there. And if you go to the next slide, you can see the next one. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you go back one? Sorry. I did want to point out, it's very hard to see on this one. I do apologize. But in the printed copy, you could probably see there's like a hatched area on some of those green lines. And that shows where, yeah, there's some hatching there. And that shows where, during the SAW grant, when they did sewer televising, where they actually found some areas of infiltration. So interestingly enough, there's not any infiltration up at the Air Force Base because the groundwater is much further removed from where the sewers are, because it's kind of up the hill. Oh, hey, look at that. But in some of the more low-lying areas near the lake shore, in the green, they did find some areas of infiltration. So, we wanted to see if there was any correlation to that and the plume, and if that could be a source of how PFAS is still getting to the wastewater plant. But the main source, as we'll see, is up in the Air Force Base, and there's a particular spot that we'll talk about here later. So if you can go to the next slide. This map just shows we went out and resampled in 2020, similar results. Actually, this is the same. These are the same slides. Similar results, though, when we resampled again, which I think is the next slide. Okay, yeah, so this is the next slide. So Oscoda was down to 12.7 PFOS, which was more on what I was expecting it to be. And then up in the Air Force lift station, pump station 16, it was 1,440 parts per trillion. So it was a little more this time around than the first time we sampled. So it really helped us focus to the investigation on the Air Force Base site, because we figured we want to reduce and eliminate the most concentrated, the most impact to the plant, kind of work on it on a prioritized basis. So if you go to the next slide. So we continued to do sampling at the former Air Force Base area. I mentioned we came up a number of times and kind of popped some manholes to see how much flow is in there, because there's not a lot of wastewater flow coming from some of those hangars. There's just a handful of bathrooms. But this one particular manhole, which I took a picture of, is actually located between hangar 7 on the base and where the old AFFF containment pond used to be. Now, it's not used anymore, but apparently there was some sludgy material left in there that appears to be rather high concentration of PFAS, and it appears to be old AFFF that's just been sitting in this manhole for 2 decades or more. So we took a sample of this, and it was a very high concentration. This manhole is pretty shallow. It's only about 2 feet deep, but you can see from the picture, it's almost all the way to the rim full of this black sludge. So I think the next slide has the concentrations of this. Yeah, so this is, that picture is manhole D, and it had PFOS at 37,900 parts per trillion. And it smelled like oil when I popped the lid. So I actually had them run an oil and grease number on it too, which was 14,200 parts per trillion. And it has a number of other PFAS compounds in it that are indicative of it being old AFFF, the first generation AFFF. First generation AFFF has a lot of PFOS and a lot of what's called PFHXS, which is a 7-carbon compound, PFAS compound. So both of those can be problematic. So if you look at the sewer illustration on the map, you see the line in blue is the line that manhole's on, and it's right in between hangar 7 and the old AFFF pond. And it comes down that blue line, and eventually it connects in with the sanitary sewer main on Flight Street. Now, there's not a lot of flow in the blue portion, which was the old Air Force, privately owned sewer. There's not a lot of flow there, and I've been told that the flow from hangar 7 no longer goes out to that blue line. It goes up north, if you will, to Skyway. So the thought is there's not any additional flow coming in there. It's just this old sludgy material that needs to get removed. But it looks like it might be eventually, slowly trickling down the blue line and getting into that yellow line, because we did some sampling along Flight Street, and PFOS numbers were fairly high. You can see manhole 16.14 has PFOS at 12,300 parts per trillion. Again, there's not a lot of flow in there, so there's not a lot of pounds of PFOS, but the concentrations are very high. So it appears that it's slowly making its way from manhole D down the blue line and over into the orange stuff that the township owns. So if you go to the next slide. So we submitted all that information to Eagle. They wanted us to go back out and do some additional sampling. So there's actually another manhole right downstream from manhole D. It's called manhole B. That was the old Air Force nomenclature. And that one has sludgy material in it too, but it's not as thick, it's not as deep in the manhole, it's more in the channel. But we took a sample of that, and it had PFOS at 204,000 parts per trillion. So it does appear that it's in those two manholes and slowly making its way down into the system. So if you zoom out a little bit, you can see it's still coming down the blue line and going over the yellow line to the east. And eventually that makes its way into lift station number 16, which serves the whole former Air Force Base area. But it appears to be getting diluted as it gets to lift station 16, just because it's mixing in with all the bathroom and sanitary wastewater from the other hangars that are connected into the site. So we've kind of focused in on this area as the first priority for remediation, eliminating sources. I should also note that we sampled Lift Station 17, which serves another barely used part of the former Air Force Base, and that also had some PFOS at 289 parts per trillion, but that's a lot lower than the 204,000 parts per trillion we found in manhole D. So if you go to the next slide. So this map, and there's a lot of information on here, I apologize, but Eagle really likes to have all the data on one map. So basically, this summarizes most of the data we've collected throughout the last couple years that shows how it's connected, where the hot spots are, if you will, of PFOS. And really, no surprise, but most of the hot spots are up in the former Air Force Base area. So, next slide. Another thing we did is we wanted to differentiate, is this from old AFFF or is this from potentially another source? And so we did what's called a kind of a signature plot. It's a pie chart where you graph the concentrations of each PFAS compound, and there's a legend there. But PFOS is the bright red color, and PFHXS is the lighter orange color. And those two colors show up in most of the samples. And that's really indicative of an old legacy AFFF, like the first generation, when they really had a lot of PFOS in the formulation. Newer AFFFs don't have that. They kind of phased it out. But the old stuff that the Air Force used to use back in the 70s and 80s and maybe even early 90s was that old stuff that had a lot of PFOS and PFHXS. And you can also see that some of the samples have some other mix of compounds in it as well. That could be from second generation AFFF. We haven't figured that out exactly yet, but it's definitely, most of the sources are looking like it's from first generation AFFF. So if you go to the next slide. So here's kind of a description of how we came to that conclusion. TRC is a research place, and they put together a training that I attended via webcast during COVID about how to do kind of looking for these signatures, and they had a good signature on first generation AFFF, the second generation, which doesn't have PFOS in it as much, and then the modern ones that don't have PFOS. So you can see that first generation with the red being PFOS and the orange color being PFHXS looks very similar to the results we found at the former Air Force Base area. So just so you know where we got that signature, kind of something that experts had been looking at for a while. Next slide, please. So this is just kind of showing, it's actually the same picture, but it just shows that we're really concentrating on that blue line there, that blue sewer line for next steps, which we'll get into here shortly. So if you go to the next one. So we are actually currently actively getting quotes from a couple of different environmental clean-out firms to see what it would cost to clean out that accumulated sludge that's in manhole B and D. And then, we want them to clean it out, the stuff that's accumulated in there. And then we want them to clean it and jet it out with some high-pressure water, and then collect that rinsate and bring it out of the system. What we don't want to do is just push it out to the treatment plant. We want to capture it and have them dispose of it properly at a disposal place that'll take PFAS contaminated material. But we do know that from a number of other locations, just cleaning it out and sucking it out probably won't remove all of it. PFAS likes to stick to stuff. So metal finishers, like in Wixom, they had a metal finisher that had a lot of PFAS, and they went out and cleaned out their tanks. They had to rinse them out a couple times before they really got all of the PFAS material out. So that's what we want to do here, is we want to take out the sludge material, then we want to have them clean it, jet it with high-pressure water, capture that contaminated rinsate, and then take care of it. We also, while they're out here, we want them to clean out the wet well for lift station 17 because it also had some PFAS in it. And then we want to confirm that hangar 7 isn't still discharging to that, what was supposed to be abandoned blue sewer line on that one map. So that we want to just confirm that that's not in use anymore. And then we want to cap the sewer that was in the blue line that's not active anymore. Nothing's connected to it. We want to cap that so that residual PFAS that might be stuck to that manhole or to that sewer piping doesn't continue to trickle into the sewer main on Flight Street, because that stuff on Flight Street all gets pumped up to the wastewater treatment plant. So after all that clean out is done, we want to go out and sample again and see what the areas downstream, like manhole 16.14, that had like 1,200 parts per trillion, see if cleaning that area out has reduced that. So we are getting quotes from a couple different companies. I was hoping to have those quotes for you today, but don't have them quite. Hopefully we'll get them by next week. And in the meantime, we continue to monitor the influent and effluent monthly. We haven't seen a lot of changes in the influent and effluent over the past 3 years. It's been pretty stable. There's little variations here and there when it rains, but pretty stable. So we're hopeful that once we clean that area out and cap it so it's no longer discharging into the system, that hopefully most of the PFAS will have been reduced and eliminated. So if you go to the next slide. At this time, I'll take any questions that you have.
Sorry. Thank you for the presentation. I do have, I guess I have a quick question, if you don't mind if I start. All right. When you say we are going to get quotes, are you saying that you're thinking that F&V is going to get quotes and the township is going to pay for this removal? Because I'm confused as to why, if we know for sure it's legacy, why we wouldn't be giving these numbers right now to the Air Force. We have a team on site that I think would be pretty proactive in removing that for us now. So I guess I would like to, I mean, if we know for sure that this is legacy, I'd like to pop that over to our Air Force people and say, hey, we got some legacy stuff here. How quickly can we jump on it and remove it not at our cost? So before, you know, I mean, I have no idea what the dollar amount's going to be, but whether it's $5 or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, and I think we had a Zoom call with Eagle to kind of discuss that strategy, and Kath and I, and I don't recall who from the township was involved in that meeting, but we had talked about having the Air Force pay for that, but we need to get the number first, so.
Right, well, I mean, what are the odds that they're not going to want to get their own numbers as well? So I guess if we looped them in to begin with, I guess would be my suggestion, but yeah, I mean, they have an office right in town, so shouldn't be too difficult to get them. That's just my comment.
Is capping
Else?
it the best choice?
Capping it?
Yeah, you were talking about capping the blue line that was on the maps, that section of sewer that's no longer in use.
Yeah.
Is capping it and leaving all of the contaminated material in the ground the best choice, or should it be torn out?
I mean, capping it's going to be more cost effective than tearing it out.
Right, but I mean, we can already see that, the further down the road the can gets kicked, the more expensive it gets, and depending on what they change in the future, it might not behoove us to just leave it down there and cross our fingers. It might be
Oh, you
better
mean
just
the
to tear
pipe
that whole
itself?
section right out of there
Yeah,
and be done with it. That way, there's no question that that's all nice and
that
good
could be
now.
done. Yep.
Much like we did at the old fire site. up by
Yeah, where they dug out all that contaminated soil and just got rid of it. Just be done with it, take it to the proper place, have them dispose of it correctly. And that way it's not hidden in the ground, waiting for some future generation to
Sure.
discover that it rained and froze and cracked and now it's leaking and blah.
Right.
So you're reporting this to Eagle, so has Eagle said anything about the fact that because it's in the fence line, that they should be automatically looping that in with the Air Force? Because anything within the fence line is supposedly legacy, so, I mean, it seems like the communication should be happening right then and there. Have they said
Right.
anything about that?
They did not. I
Okay.
do know that the status report that had the data from that blue line and that showed the map that showed the manhole that was contaminated was sent to, it wasn't the Air Force directly, it was that one person. I can't remember his name, Kath. He worked for federal, I don't remember his name. We shared that data with them, though.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's been kind of the board's ongoing concern that Eagle keeps making us jump through hoops that cost us more money, that really within the fence line is actually, the Air Force has said, we will take care of it. I mean, they literally have said that. So I guess I don't want to see us jumping through more hoops that Eagle's telling us to jump through and racking up more bills if we can bring the Air Force in right now. So,
Well, Ann, you guys are our client, so we work at your direction. So any information that we share with you, if you want us to pass that along to Air Force or coordinate that with you, we'll be happy to contact people. But any reports, any costs, anything that we have come to you first for your review and then go from you out. So we don't want to circumvent the board or the township's authority to do that. And, basically, you are the ones that are guiding that process. And so if you want Elaine and I to communicate with them directly and copy Tammy, or whether you want to be Tammy or the township to be the conduit to the Air Force and, DOD or whoever, so that you guys are all in the loop. So that's our goal. And so, whatever direction you give us, that's the direction we're going to take. If the board wants to see that pipe removed, that after it's confirmed that it's inactive, that would be something that the township would, want to bring pressure to bear on, the Department of Defense or Air Force, because we don't have those contacts and we don't have the leverage that you have. So we're just here as your consultants to bring you the information and costs and to follow your direction in regard to those decisions.
right, and I respect that. I'm just saying that, I mean, it sounds like you've been working on these quotes for a little bit, and if you get those quotes, and then we stick it to the Air Force to, to want them to pay for it, they're gonna need to get quotes, so then we're just delaying even further, something that maybe could be taken care of far quicker if we just loop them in now, so, would be my thought anyways, but. Doesn't hurt to ask, or push, or.
And thank you, by the way,
Yeah.
for going out and doing the legwork and lifting up the manhole cover and looking with your eyes. It
Yeah.
seems like that should have been done a while ago, but you did
Right.
it. Thank you.
Yep.
It was somebody in the audience.
Oh, it's, I don't know what it is tonight, but it just seems like you can hear background voices like a lot easier, like it's picking up on some speakers, so sorry. I feel like there's Oz behind the curtain or something, I keep hearing voices, but yeah, good information. Anybody else? I know there's a few people that are waiting.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I know you mentioned Eagle a couple different times in the presentation, but do they accept your numbers of testing as the actual numbers, or do they have to do their own testing as well?
Eagle has accepted our numbers, whether DOD would. I know that in the past, when Eagle started their investigation, that DOD also had their subcontractor following right behind them and sampling the same locations at the same time, et cetera. At this point in time, Eagle's accepting the numbers that we have because with the laboratory we're using and the protocols that we are using, that they've accepted our numbers as being true and accurate numbers for the monitoring that we're doing.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, just, Ann has touched on a couple of the things that I wanted to ask about, but we're talking about Eagle here, and I think there's two different things going on here, because back in 2019, we were directed by Eagle under our permit that we operate the treatment plant under their permit process, ordered us to investigate the PFAS that was discovered in the effluent. And at that time, we entered a contract with F&V for $26,900 for the initial, to begin the investigation. And then a year ago, a subsequent amount of $39,000 for the additional testing. It's a different division of Eagle that is requiring us to do that, as it is the division of Eagle that's overseeing the cleanup on the base.
That's correct.
Beth Place is the project engineer for the Wordsmith project. She reached out to the township a month or so ago, wanting to know if we had a wish list of things that she could help us with, because they certainly have more leverage with the Air Force than we do, because they're the enforcing agency. So I would certainly think that, as Ann mentioned, this would be something that would be on our wish list.
Yeah.
And I would think if that were coordinated through Beth Place
Yep.
at Eagle and the Air Force, we might get a little quicker action on cleaning up this mess of the legacy PFAS that's left behind.
Yeah.
In those areas that you've
A few months ago, well, actually, it was in the spring, we had a virtual meeting with the Water Resources Division at Eagle that required this investigation,
Right.
and also with Beth Place and her folks, and I think the consultant for the Air Force. And we discussed this very line, and we discussed that manhole in particular, and the fact that we wanted the Air Force to clean that out. And we're kind of at this point where they wanted us to get the quote, and we've been working on that ever since, so.
So in other words, what you're saying is that the Air Force indicated that if we got the quote, then they would, if we had the work done, they would reimburse the township for that cost?
Well, no,
No,
not,
Eagle
no,
Because-
they didn't,
Because the Air Force has been slippery on all these things that we've
No,
tried to
they
deal
wanted-
with on them.
they wanted us to work on a plan, because we operate the facility. They wanted us to, come up with a plan to how to clean it out and how we thought it would be best to handle it. And we're working on that with a number of environmental disposal agencies.
But I'm sorry, you're saying Eagle said that, not the Air Force. Is that what I heard, or was there an Air Force representative there?
I'd have to go back to the meeting notes, Ann,
Okay.
and I believe you and Tammy may have been on that meeting also. That it's been sort of that, our understanding was that the Air Force was willing to go forward with this, and then there was kind of an about face where it's like, no, we're not gonna do that. So they've, like you said, been slippery in regard to this. So, I think that our best effort would be to share that data, or anything with you first, and then also with Beth Place and whoever from remediation, and maybe take a two-prong approach to this. But, we can definitely communicate with Beth and with whoever you want, so that if they're gonna need multiple quotes, they can also pursue this simultaneously, like you said, to kind of shorten the timeline. We have found it's been very difficult to get anyone, surprisingly enough, to want to suck out a manhole full of PFAS and dispose of it. I don't know why, but they just seem very reluctant to quote it. We've had several environmental firms who are, large, reputable environmental firms who have declined to quote. We had one that we found, but they didn't want to mobilize from the UP down here. They had done similar work up on K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base
In Marquette.
in Marquette, but they didn't want to come down here for that. We've been working with a couple environmental firms down here, but I don't know if it's a staffing issue, if they're having, at this point in time, from what we understand is, once they accept the material, they have to find an ultimate disposal for it. So they don't want to commit to cleaning it out until they have an avenue to dispose of it and a cost to dispose of it, because obviously that is going to become part of their quote. So it's, that's kind of
And
why
that's
it's.
been, the
yeah.
part that's been long to get is the disposal cost. Nobody wants to take it, but they're working on it, so we can work with another, firm or the Air Force if they have a contractor that they might want to pursue at the same time.
Okay.
Well, the Air Force did have to find a place to dump the soil that they
Yeah,
removed.
I thought it was
Yeah.
White, I
Out
thought
there,
it was
and that
down
was
in Willow Run.
A landfill down that
Right.
accepts that type of
But
material.
it's becoming, increasingly more difficult because the landfills are now being regulated. And if the landfills have leachate, that has to be monitored and that has to be disposed of. And it just, as everything with PFAS is very circular in the way that it works because it doesn't break down. And so, even if they find a disposal path for it, ultimately, it's still gonna have a potential for someone else to have to treat, any leachate from it or whatever. So it's very difficult and is probably gonna be very costly to do that. So, we will definitely reach out to Beth Place's group at Eagle. I'll get that contact information, confirm it from Tammy if we don't already have it. And then if there's anybody else that you would like us to communicate that with, then we will make sure that any communications that we have with them, we will copy, Tammy and Anna on so that everyone is aware of the progress on this.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And just two other points. One was, in the report you had sent a form to, I think, 11 different businesses in the area. At one point, you hadn't received all of them back, but there were a good number of safety data sheets that were collected.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, I see our fire chief is here. Has that information been turned over to the fire department? Because in each one of those, there was paragraphs that talked about firefighting and what to do and what not to do in terms of a fire at some of these locations.
For the
I just wondered
SES
if the
sheets?
fire department had that information.
We can definitely share that with Chief.
Okay.
So that's something, I don't know if the fire department has its own program where they maintain any kind of document file for non-commercial or non-residential
Okay.
places that may have.
I just noticed on all those data sheets, there were fire retardant requirements, and a lot of them weren't just spray water on it. They
Right.
were-
I mean,
Much
usually the business would have their own, emergency plan.
Okay.
And that would include
And-
coordinating with the authorities.
And the other question I had is F&V charging the township by the page? Because when I looked at this packet, it's like War and Peace when I looked at this packet.
No,
and
no.
It's a very extensive, and I see where our money is going to put all this information
The
together.
majority of the
It's-
costs are testing. And actually, if you look at both of those proposals, which I recently gave a copy to the superintendent along with the invoices that are related to this, just to reiterate, but the majority of the costs on those are for the actual analysis. And so those analyses are still, close to $1,000 each. And I don't even know, Elaine would have a full count on the number of samples that we've collected under this, but it's quite a significant number of them.
Yeah. Well, it's a very extensive report, and thank you.
Yeah, those were all items Eagle specifically wanted to see, so that's
Great,
why they were
thank you.
included.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
I don't
No,
think-
all
I
set?
think
Okay,
All right, thanks.
thank you.
You're more than, there's nothing else on you're more than welcome to stay on for the rest of the meeting if you want, but are you on the agenda for other discussion? Okay. I should know that, but, okay. Moving on, then, we have our second public presentation. That is Consumers Energy Wire Down presentation.
All right, good evening. Just want to thank you guys for allowing us to be here tonight to help answer any questions and also present. I got a couple of my teammates here tonight, so I'll let them introduce themselves. But I'm Rich Castle. I'm the Community Affairs Manager for Consumers Energy for Northeast Michigan, based out of our Tawas office.
Hello, my name is Lorena Pilar, and I work with the Damage Claims Department.
Hi, Michelle Kinch. I work with our Restoration Management Department, and I do a lot of our process analysis.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lisa Douglas, and I'm the Director of Emergency Management and Public Safety.
All right, so I guess we'll start out first, before we get into the presentation, just a little bit of a timeline on how this all got started. I think some of you might remember that time frame. So very first, safety of our customers, our first responders, the general public, and our employees, that's our most important priority. And so back in mid to late 2018, Consumers Energy became aware of concerns about the response times to down wires here in Iosco County, and in particular with Oscoda Township. At that time, taking that very seriously, in early 2019, Consumers Energy reviewed the down wire response times in the county, and we implemented a problem-solving team among other internal and external efforts to help better the situation. Also, during that time frame, the Consumers Energy completed a customer experience interviews with various fire departments and 911s across the state. And those experience interviews provided a lot of good information for us to figure out how we could better respond to down wires, how we could work better with fire departments, how we could work better with our 911s throughout the state. Here in Iosco County, we did those interviews with the East Tawas Fire Department and the Iosco County 911 dispatch. About the same time, we also plan to open a new service center here in Tawas. And in May of 2019, we actually had crews relocate here to Tawas and work out of a temporary building. And those folks served Iosco County, served Alcona County, and parts of Aranet County. And in 2020, August 2020, that building officially opened. So we have a brand new building as of that time. We currently have approximately 25 employees working out of that building, serving that same exact area. Over that entire time, we still continue to work on a regular basis with the fire departments in Iosco County, as well as the 911 on pilot projects. Honestly, it's been a great relationship. We've learned a lot from each other. There was a lot of learning about what Consumers Energy's process is, but learning a lot about what the fire departments and what the 911 dispatch has to go through when we're in a storm event or when we have wire down. So there was, again, I can't emphasize this. It was a great opportunity for all of us to get a better understanding of what the process is and things that we need to do differently to make the process more efficient and better on all fronts. I think the single most effective thing that we learned through this entire process is the difference between a premise and a non-premise order. And what that means is a premise is an address. So when we have wire downs that have an address, we're able to respond a lot more effectively, quicker. When we have a non-premise order, and that data will be provided a little bit later, but that tends to delay things significantly, because what we have to do in order to find out where those locations are is we have to look for, well, in a premise order, when we have an address, we can ping that to a meter. And when we don't have an address, we have nothing to ping that to from our perspective. So it's basically a wild goose chase in a sense of trying to figure out where exactly where the wire down could be at. And so if you take a Plainfield Township as an example, there may be other Plainfield Townships in the state. And so one, you have to determine, are you even in Iosco County? Then you have to figure out what your crossroads are and get the crews to the right location. So when you have an address, it makes things so much more efficient. And so that was a lessons learned, not only for Consumers Energy, but being able to relay that information to our fire departments, also to relay that information off to our 911s. So we're all effectively working from the same process. So I think at this time, we'll move over to Michelle Kinch. We provided some data to the township to help review how we believe our wire down response has improved over the last 4 years actually. So I'll pass it over to Michelle, but if you want to go on to the next 2 slides, appreciate it. Thank you.
As you can see here on this chart, the first group of bars on the bar chart are indicated blue sky. The next group is gray sky, and the next one's catastrophic. So when we analyze our storms for many different things, we break them down into these groups. So blue sky is any storm that we have, or whether there's non-storm or up to 1% of our customer base that is affected, and that is approximately 18,000 customers. So everything that falls in there is any day that is up to 18,000 customers impacted. And then gray sky is between 1 and 10% of our customer base, which is between 18,000 and 180,000 customers impacted. And then catastrophic, that's where there's over 180,000 customers impacted. Okay, so you can see we're going to go into it in much more detail in further slides, but you can see in the blue sky, we went from an average of 75 minutes to relieve public safety public officials that are on site in 2017 to 45 minutes in 2021. So that's really a significant improvement. If you can kind of slide it over to the gray sky bars. So it doesn't look like a huge improvement there. We kind of went up and down, but we went from 159 minutes in 2017 to 134 in 2021. And then you can see in the catastrophic, it's kind of almost all bets off in catastrophic. If it's catastrophic, there's so much going on, there really aren't any guarantees. But one thing I do want to point out here, there's only a 1-point difference, and again, we're going to get into it in deeper details, but between the 2017 and 2021, there's only 1-point difference. But in 2021, we had one of our largest storms that we have in our recorded history. So in order to be able to even maintain that with one of our largest storms, just indicates the amount of improvement that we've made. Okay, next slide. So what this is this is blue sky non-storm declared. So this is just every normal day. So if you look at the normal days, you can see that the green trend line on there is showing that the number of minutes is decreasing from 2021 from 2017, or this is 2018 to 2021. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is gray sky, so this is where we're between the 1% and 10% of our customers that are impacted. And I put these rectangle bars on there that are indicated 1, 2, 3, 4. And I just wanted to show the impact that it has when we really get a bad storm. So the first one, bar number 1, that is showing a storm that we had on 7/19 of 2020. At one time, we had 16 active police fires, and that's where we had public officials on a wire down. We had 106 other wire downs. 106 other wire downs, and our relief time was 286 minutes. Where, if you look at the next one, we had 4 police fires, 31 wire downs, and 177 minutes was our relief time. So it just shows the impact that it has when we have, multiple things going on at the same time. We have, so many resources, and we're utilizing those resources the best we can to our first priority is public safety. So we want to get out there and secure the wire downs that are out there, so we don't have the public in danger there too, and relieving public safety. Okay, the next slide, please. So this is showing, and again, I want to stress that we had in 2021 one of our largest storms ever. So you can see even in catastrophic storms, all of the improvements that we have made have had a significant improvement, a significant effect on our response times, because even that green trend line is showing, yes, thank you, is showing the improvement that we have made in the last several years, even in a catastrophic storm where it's just chaotic. So we feel that we have made significant improvements. Are we where we want to be in the end? No, we are still going to continually improve our processes, but we want to let you see how much we have improved over the last few years. Any questions?
Thank you.
Lorraine?
Okay. Okay, so my department processes the fire runs whenever they are received. So this one, it's the Public Act of 1951, and the Public Act of 1951 enables municipalities to enact cost recovery ordinance to recover variables hourly fees. So basically that one, it's saying that your municipality can recover any invoices or any services that you provided for us. Next slide, please. And then our position is we pay a substantial amount of property taxes to the townships and other taxing authorities throughout the state that support general emergency services. Should I go ahead and read the bullet points or just, yeah?
Just go through them.
Okay. We believe the first hour of response time should not be billed in consideration of the customary public protection and initial response duties performed by public safety and agencies. We are willing to pay an amount up to $200 per hour, broken down into half-hour increments for most incidents. In the event that additional resources are required, such as when blocking off roadways that a down power line is crossing, we are willing to pay up to $400 per hour, again, half-hour increments. Next slide, please. And third-party damages, incidents caused by third parties, such as motor vehicle incidents, should be billed directly to the damaging party and will not be accepted for payment by Consumers Energy. Next slide, please. And then submitting cost recovery billing. Please include your work order or notification that you are given when reporting the incident to us. Also, please include a copy of the NFIRS report and our dispatch log so we can determine who requested assistance, the time involved in responding to the incident, and a narrative description and the nature of the problem. Also, please include a copy of the ordinance, and as Rick mentioned, if you don't have an exact address, cross intersection will be great as well. And just a detailed description of how many vehicles you had or how many people you had on and for how long. And then there's an address provided where it can be submitted. Once we receive those invoices, we tend to get them processed within the first 10 days that we receive them. And you can either receive payment in a check, or if the municipality has ACH payment set up, then we can also do that as well. Okay. And that was it.
I think. So, We're open to any questions, but wanted to make sure that our team was here today to help answer questions about the data that was provided. You know, the graphs can be a little bit overwhelming, but, you know, we're happy to help, you know, answer any questions or concerns that you may have, so.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions right now?
Just one comment, Rich. I know when we opted not to respond to down wires, the response times were up to 8-9 hours. Our firemen were sitting on a down wire, and we have, you know, they're volunteer firemen that have other jobs.
Understood.
That they make their living. Don't you think that part of the responsibility, the reason for that was when consumers moved their facility out of East Tawas over to West Branch, and so we didn't have people
You know,
here
we
in the immediate area?
Yep, I know what your question is. You know, we had our employees working out of West Branch. We had employees, you know, traveling back and forth and doing the best they can. I think part of what we were looking to do was making sure that we were able to respond more effectively, and that was the reason for opening the new Tawas office and getting those crews back in the area. And I think that made a dramatic change or a dramatic difference in the response times that we have here in the area currently. So that's one key aspect of the changes. The other key part of that is that relationship that we've had with 911 and the fire departments, and them better understanding our process and us better understanding their process, and some of the things that we were able to accomplish during that time frame. So we were making things more efficient. We piloted some things that really worked out well. You know, and I think Iosco County in general, in a sense, was a guinea pig in some of those cases and testing out some of this stuff. And I think as we continue to evolve within this process, you know, hopefully those things will get implemented statewide. And so this was a good thing, not only here in Iosco County, but will likely be a good thing that we've implemented statewide, hopefully. So.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, our firefighters are dedicated people, and I don't think they really wanted to leave the public in possible danger by not, you know, going to down wires, but the length of time at that time that was involved. Now, I think with opening the new building in East Tawas, bringing the equipment back closer to Iosco County and Oscoda Township, and according to your graphs, you're improving response times. We have something on the agenda later on tonight to approve our firefighters responding to not only down wires but accidents and other things. And I hope that consumers has made the improvements so that their response times, and we'll get our firefighters, you know, not sitting for 4 and 5 and 6, 10 hours, 12 hours on a down line somewhere. So,
you know, that's why we wanted to present the data, because there wouldn't be a better way to be able to show the township board how we've been able to progress over the last 4 years. And, you know, my team knows this, but, you know, I've been dedicated to try to make this day happen. I mean, this has been one of my goals. I know this has been one of the company's goals, is to be able to be here, to be able to talk with you, answer your questions, but have the ability for you guys to respond someday again to this. And so, you know, I hope that we've been able to prove the data shows that we've been able to do that. You know, when we get into a catastrophic storm event, and I'll just be clear on that, when we get to that type of situation, it is an all hands on deck situation. And when you have multiple down wires, I mean, there are going to be some of those long duration, you know, situations, but our crews are going to be able to get there as quickly as we possibly can. And when we do have that happen, we do have additional resources that do come to the area and help try to respond, you know, as effective as they possibly can. I think where we're seeing the biggest change is in those blue sky days where there's not a lot going on, but before, where it was taking us maybe some time to be able to get to those wire downs, we're able to get there more effectively. The smaller storms, we're being able to get there more effectively. And ultimately, that's where you're seeing the biggest change. And so I think that that's something that we can, bank on, that we're here, we're going to do our jobs, and we're going to do what needs to be done to keep the public safe. But we also want to take into consideration exactly what you mentioned, Bill, and that was, making sure that our, first responders are taken care of and they're getting, what they need out of this as well. And, to Lorena's point, we are able to reimburse the township for the time and the effort. So that's always been an option. I can't comment on why maybe that wasn't, an instance in the past, but we've always been able to do that. So we want to make sure that you guys are adequately compensated. And I will just say, in working with the fire departments, and in particular the East Tawas Fire Department and Tawas City, they've seen the drastic changes that have happened. They're seeing that they're able to better respond, better to manage their crews when it comes to down wires. So we're going to continue to find ways to make that opportunity better. But in 4 years' time frame, we've made a lot of progress, and so I'm happy that we're here to be able to talk about this tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Rick?
Yeah, you were talking about pinging meters. Could you describe that to me, please?
I guess what I'm saying is the address allows us to look into our system. So if you have an electric service, you have a meter. And so when we're looking at our address, when we get an address within our system to go to a down wire, we can go into our system, and that allows us to know, okay, this is where we're going. We're whatever Ann Richards' house is and her address, we know that there's a down wire there. That's where we need to go. Whereas if we don't get an address whatsoever, we have no idea really where we're going. We're just going, based on the description that the fire department gave us. And that is not always the most efficient. That doesn't allow us to create the order, doesn't allow us to go through our normal internal process. So anytime we had that address, that really speeds up the internal process. It allows us to get that information to our crews easily, allows us to get that information to our dispatch easily. On the other hand, if we don't have an address, as I said before, you got to verify that you're even in Iosco County. You have to verify all of that information. And sometimes that gets pushed off to the side because we're getting all these other orders that have addresses, and it takes somebody the time to go through and investigate and look into it. And I believe the figure was, in 2021, the difference between the two was 66 minutes. So if you think about that, if we're given an address versus a situation where we don't have an address, there's an additional 66 minutes on average that is taken to be able to figure out where we need to go if we don't have an address. I mean, that's time. That's time for the firefighters to be sitting there waiting to, for us to get there. And if that's the average, we know that there are some that are there quicker, but we know there's some that are out there longer. So one of the things that if you guys elect to respond again to down wires tonight or at a future meeting, we do offer electric hazard wire training to the fire departments. And that's something I would highly advise because it's been a few years since the Township Fire Department has responded to down wires. We would offer that. Our public safety liaison would come in, meet with the Township Fire Department, get them trained again, talk more a little bit about that addressing feature, knowing what it is that we need to be able to make that process quicker, more efficient. And that's all part of what we've done with Tawas City, East Tawas. We regularly work with the fire departments to get them that information, that training, so they know what it is that we need to make the process easier.
So you don't actually ping the meters?
No.
Okay. So there's no way for you guys to say that meter is connected right now and that meter is not?
The fastest way for us to know that there's a down wire is by somebody calling it in, having the fire department respond, or the fire department actually seeing it and being able to get us the information. That is the fastest way for us to know what's going on out on the.
Right. Well, you just said that you ping the meters, and to me that means that you're bouncing something off it to see if it's there or not.
No.
And so you led me to believe that you guys had some newfangled technology where you can see which meters are online, which should make it much easier for you to determine which lines are down.
Let me clarify. When it comes to down wires, we can't ping anything to find out whether or not there's a down wire, okay? What I was insinuating was we use that address to connect that to a meter in our internal system. So when I say ping, that's what I mean. It has nothing to do with the smart meter or anything that we
So you're
are able to
correlating
do to
addresses
decide whether or not there's no
to
power at a
meters.
site.
So it's a correlation.
Sorry,
Okay.
what's that?
So it would be more of a correlation between the meter ID number and the address that it's assigned to?
Correct, correct.
Not a ping where you're.
Correct,
It's
you're
online.
correct.
Okay. Now, you
Wrong
said
choice
that-
of words.
I noticed that you were talking about that you would like to see not getting a bill for the first hour of a wire down. So, and you mentioned that you guys have lots of property and you pay lots of property tax. But I, as a citizen, pay property tax as well, and I would not be afforded that option if there were to be services performed at my house. If I call consumers and say, hey, I need a new meter, and you guys send a guy, do I get the first hour of labor for free?
No. So I will just say we are the largest
I understand.
property taxpayer in the Iosco
I
County.
appreciate
and
that.
that's the
I'm
case
just-
in many counties in the state of Michigan. So, that's the process.
So you're asking for special treatment for the first hour.
Do you have anything to add to that?
The municipality can set up the charges or how much they are gonna charge us under ordinance.
Up to
So
the
that's
$200 or $400
up to
per hour
yes, yes.
that you
So
allow.
That's really up to you guys, how much, you guys are gonna charge us. But if you are gonna charge us, let's say $500 an hour, then we ask that you charge that same amount to the other utility companies as well.
Oh, for gas and gas leaks and other things? I think that would be a reasonable request,
Yes.
personally. Okay, all right.
We don't only pay for wire downs. Basically, if somebody, if there was like a gas meter or a
Right.
gas line, then we do pay on those as well. We just need the information to determine if
Fair
it's
enough.
something.
Okay. And then my last question revolves around some hearsay. So in the past, when they started not coming to these wire downs, there were allegations that bills had been submitted that consumers did not pay. Do you have any records that show that you received a bill from us that was not paid? And if so, what was the reasoning? Was it because that was a traffic accident and that you shouldn't be held liable, as I agree with your slide?
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
The last invoices that we received was in 2019. Only 2 invoices were received, and those 2 invoices were paid out. If it was a car accident involved, a car pole accident, then it's the damager, which is like the owner of the vehicle, that's responsible to paying for that invoice.
Yes, and I agree, that's 100%. So the reason that I'm asking the question is because of the hearsay where, well, we submitted all these invoices and they never got paid. So that's not true.
That's not true. We
Okay.
have only received 2 invoices since.
And both were paid
2018, and both were
in
paid.
2019?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You want to go to the next slide? If you could go to the next slide, please. You want to talk about that?
Okay, so this is numbers from 2020 to 2022 for Iosco County, for all the other townships that they have submitted their invoices and that we have paid up to date.
Okay, so basically, close to 24.5 were submitted, and 100% of those invoices were paid?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And the county as a whole?
How many other townships does that number account for?
It's
The Tawas
East Tawas, I had it in the notes.
I know it's East Tawas, Tawas City. I believe it's Plainfield as well.
The local area?
Yes,
For all
all of
intents.
Iosco County.
It's Iosco County.
I mean,
the only
obviously,
fire department that
Oscoda
doesn't.
Township is not in there because you didn't respond to any since, 2019. But the point is giving you an idea of what our process is, how many claims that we've had, and then also how much money we've reimbursed back to the fire departments for the work and the time that they put into doing that.
So if we decide to go to these wire down emergencies in the future, which I can tell you that I would support, and we decide that we are going to bill for the first hour, is that a deal breaker?
Again, however you decide to charge, that is up to the.
As long as it's
county.
consistent
As long as it's
for
consistent.
everybody gets it. It's not, we're not saying, we're not singling you out. As long as everybody gets it, then everybody will be happy.
Correct.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, Consumers Energy isn't the gas utility here in Iosco County. That's another company.
I
So
believe.
we're electric only here. So just wanted to clarify that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, just one other quick question. You're talking about the address for consumers, and I can understand what the problem is for that. Our fire department is dispatched by 911. If there isn't an address, how is the fire department dispatched to a location of a wire down?
A passerby may find it. They get the same kind of information that we get to a certain degree. If there's not an address or somebody doesn't call it in and give an address, it could be, and I'm just throwing out an example, but say it's somewhere out on River Road and it's, 2 miles between roads. I mean, all the information that they could say is it's on River Road, and they might say it's somewhere between here and there, and that's all we have to work with. And so that's the issue that we have.
So in other words, the fire department has to go out and find it,
Yep.
is what you're saying?
Yep. And then
what
they
you're
relay that
suggesting-
information back to 911 dispatch, then they reach out to us, give us that information. And again, it takes time for us to figure out where that's exactly
Okay,
at.
all right, I got it.
And so what we're advising is even if you don't have an address, give us the closest address, because in some cases, that at least gets us close to the scene. It may not be the exact place, but at least it gets us close to the scene.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So our system does not allow us to dispatch unless we have an address. So what happens is if what we call a non-premise comes in, it will go into let's say a bucket, and then a very skilled person has to go in and start researching and pulling up maps and looking at our PDMs to try to determine the best guess of where that is. But we have to be able to apply an address to that before we can actually dispatch to it. So sometimes that's where some of that time takes. It's not just we're gonna say the address is right there. We have to do quite a bit of research to determine what address we're gonna apply to that, because we also don't want our crews wandering around looking for something because we sent them on a wild goose chase.
Are your poles serial numbered in any way?
They do have numbers, but they are not linked in our system.
Seriously?
Transformers are.
Part of the reason why we don't use the pole numbers is because we've replaced so many poles over the years that
Your database is just a
yes,
mess.
they're irrelevant.
Yeah.
So again, it goes back to address, and that's what we found to be the most efficient way to respond to a down wire.
So in other words, the process would be that 911 would dispatch our fire department, in your example, River Road. And there's a lot of areas on River Road where there aren't houses, but a wire could be down.
Exactly.
And it could be one of the major power lines.
Yep.
So the fire department would respond and find the wire, and then contact dispatch and say, well, it's just west of Old Orchard Park, or, whatever. And even though they wouldn't be able to give you an address because there isn't one.
Or west of this address.
Yes, but they would try to nail it down a little bit closer so that
Exactly.
then you
Yep.
would have an area to send it to, even though you don't have an address.
That's right.
So in that scenario, if you don't have the address, is the 66-minute delay still tied into that?
That's the average. So it could be quicker, it could be more. It just depends what's going on at the time. I mean, if it's a slow day, it could be quicker. If it's a catastrophic storm, that's where things get, expanded out further. So today I sent Josh an email that contained a form, and that form basically gives the fire department directions on what we need to be able to, make the process more efficient.
Okay.
And so, again, that's part of the training, that's part of the stuff that we've learned in working between the fire department and ourselves as to how we make this process more efficient. And the same with 911, they're a big part of this process too, so.
Sounds to me like the best way to make it more efficient would be to update your poll database. Just saying.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other
I think we
questions?
beat this, I think that we beat this up. So thank you very much. It was a
All
very
right.
good
Yes, thank you.
presentation, great
Appreciate
information.
your time.
And appreciate it. We'll be
you.
discussing this topic a little
Thank you,
later in
Rich.
the agenda. Okay, moving on then. We are at our first public comment section of the agenda. Again, this is reserved for just agenda items. Are there any cards.
I have one.
Okay.
Rick Koenig. The topic is EIC Director Update.
Okay.
How you guys doing tonight?
Hi, Rick.
Hi. My name is Rick Koenig from Oscoda, Michigan. Really quick, can I ask, is this part of the survey, this part here that has the questions, was that from the Warrior Pavilion meeting?
It is being presented to us this evening, so I honestly can't answer that question.
Could you answer it? Was this from the Warrior Pavilion or something different?
My presentation's come out in a few minutes.
Okay. All right, I attended all three of those Warrior Pavilion meetings. In the first meeting, they split us into 7 groups with about 6 people in each group. 5 out of those 7 groups had at least one member of a planning commission or the EIC mixed in with the Oscoda residents, who most of them didn't know who they were, mixed in with their groups. The 2 groups that didn't have either of them was a group that I was in and a group that one of my friends was in. Those 2 sketches were pulled by the following meeting. So 7 groups, 7 sketches. By the next meeting, turned into 5 sketches. The ones that we had submitted got pulled out by the EIC director for whatever reason. The sketches that were pulled out didn't have any condos or mixed use on it. So at the second meeting, people didn't get a look at that one. They were presented with 5, 4 out of those 5 having condos on most, or one of them with mixed use. There was only one that didn't have a structure like that. So then they were asked to choose which one they liked the best. Everybody was given a playing card, told to rip it in half, and choose the 2 that they liked the best. A lot of people there only wanted to pick one they liked the best, because by making us choose 2, it was forcing us to pick at least one that had a condo on it or a mixed use on it. So after a little upset and some discussion, the EIC director decided if we only wanted to vote on the one, the other half could be placed at the front of his desk. People were told that if he didn't find the other half of the card, meaning if somebody only wanted to vote for A because A didn't have any permanent structures on it, and he didn't find the other half of the card, wasn't going to count. Their vote wouldn't count. Now I'm looking at this packet tonight, and now I'm only seeing 4 sketches. So another one, we started with 7. He eliminated 5 after or 2 of them by the second meeting, so nobody could see them. I don't know when the other one got pulled, but now from 7 we're at 4. And if you look at it, only option option A is the one that does not have condos on it. The other 3 condos, 3-story condos, condo. I'd like to know, when he does his presentation, why the 2 were pulled before the second meeting and not allowed to be voted on. And I'd like to know what happened to the 3rd sketch that was there that night that's not included here in the survey. I'd also like to know why it took 14 months to release this. This says public survey was July 15th. We're almost at September 15th. 14 months to get this, but now the township has started another survey, which I believe started September 1st and goes for,
Okay.
I don't know, a couple months.
All right, thank you, Rick. 4
Thank
minutes
you.
are up. Thank you very much. And again, we will be given that presentation a little bit later on in the agenda under subcommittee reports and project updates. Okay. All right, then no more comment cards?
No.
Okay, moving on then to the consent agenda. First on the consent agenda, we have the regular meeting minutes of August 8th revisited. We tabled those at the last meeting and brought them forth. Are there any comments on those?
Just one in on the
Okay.
on page 3, where it has the new section 6.36 ADU, and then it has the subsequent sections that we were going to revise, and they were a first read. The first one has the 6.636 ADU, then it also lists the new micro-housing, plan unit development, Chapter 20 parks. I think that should all be deleted out of that. That's confusing to have all that added in under there. And the same thing with the next one, the new micro-housing ordinance. Again, that was a first read to amend Article 5. Or not Article 5. Article 5 is the next one that was a first read. So just for, to eliminate confusion on this, that extra wording should be
Okay,
taken out of it.
I see what you're saying. So basically, new section 6.36 ADU ordinance should be first read only, and then just restate the new section 6.6.
Like
not
the rest,
all the other stuff
the rest
after
of
it.
them just say first read,
Right,
which is
correct.
what all of them should state.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No,
right.
not on that one.
And then we have regular meeting minutes of August 22nd. I had reached out to Josh for a couple things today on those. I believe he distributed those. There was just a couple corrections that I found.
Saw that.
Okay.
There's
Was there
one
anything
other-
else?
One other correction on that, again, on page 3, the row engineering invoice 104,562. It indicates that invoice was for wastewater improvement, when in fact it was water system improvement. That's why it's paid out of the DWRF checking.
All right. 104,562. So instead of wastewater, it should be water improvement.
Right, right.
Okay, anything else?
No, that was it.
Okay, anybody else have anything? All right, with those, are we good with those two changes then? All right, then moving on, under finance, we have quite a bit here. We have a prepaid from August 25th. The amount of that is $2,765.19. Were there any specific comments on that? Okay, hearing none. Next, we have a prepaid from August 30th. That amount is $364,427.42. Are there any discussion on that?
I had a question on one item.
Okay.
On page 48 of the packet, there's a charge for a sign, the township sign repair. We had an agreement with the school at one time to share the cost for that sign. I don't know if that agreement has expired or.
Never for maintenance, only for the installation, I thought.
I believe if it's the invoice I'm thinking of, is it for, how much is the invoice for?
$800 and some dollars.
That was for the repainting of the sign by the water fountain in the front,
So the sandblasted sign,
Okay.
where the fountain is.
not the electronic.
Oh, not the electronic sign. Okay.
Right.
Okay, I got
A
you.
little map on it, right? It's got the
Yes.
map of the
Yeah.
Oscoda
Yeah, they
and the
touched
little
it up.
waterfall.
Oh, yeah, okay. Do we still have that agreement with the school?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Do we know if it's for maintenance only, or for purchase only, or maintenance included?
Basically, what we do is discuss with the school ahead of time what we'd like to do, like in the past when we've had to replace the board. Just contact Scott more directly, and we discuss it, and usually they're pretty willing to help with everything.
Okay. Any other questions then on that run? All right. We have a September 6th run of $63,401.73. Any questions or comments on that? All right. Check run September 13th, $57,888.23. Comments or questions on that? And we have a CWSRF checking report. That amount is $47,024.75. Questions there? And then DWRF checking report, $12,663.75. Anything there? And then last, we have the quarter one financial report clarification. I know Jamie emailed out some information earlier today. I don't know if everybody had an opportunity to review that, but if there's any further discussion, or if Jamie, you want to go over that?
Just wanted to point out, just for the audience sake, because like you said, I sent out the email to the board. I sent a revised copy of the first quarter financials. There was 3 revenue lines from 509, which is Old Orchard Park, Sewer Fund, and Water Fund. I had the incorrect number there. Went back to look at my numbers, not really sure how that happened, if I didn't save it or whatever. Was just trying to get the report out to the board, so my apologies to everybody. If you have any further questions about it, I'd be happy to answer it.
The questions mainly came from Bill, so.
Yep. And he basically pointed that out.
Yeah, it was just a matter of, there were, Jamie sent out a little time after our last meeting because Mr. Westbrath had a question about a negative fund balance, and she sent the copy of the kind of a spreadsheet thing that has the formula that you use for calculating the fund balance. And then there's also the regular, that was this document, and then the regular normal sheets that we have that have all the funds listed and the revenues. And what caught my eye was when I looked at this, it had, for the first quarter of 2022, the revenue for Old Orchard Park at $110,000. That seems like a lot for them to generate by the end of March. And so if you look at page 95 in the packet, on this report, you'll see that the fund, the revenue was $42,550. So the numbers that were on this report were different than the numbers that were on this report. And I spoke with Jamie last Friday, and she said she had this information at home, and she corrected it and sent it out to everybody, so it's taken care of.
Okay, great. Problem solved.
Yes.
All right. So with that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Spencer to approve the consent agenda. Is that supported?
Support. Palmer.
And there's support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Okay, moving on the agenda, we have subcommittee reports and project updates. This evening, we have Todd is going to give his EIC director update.
Yep, the director update includes this Fertall Field workshop update as requested, I believe, by Supervisor Richards.
Correct.
So I'm happy to, go through this report in detail for you. So we administered this survey during, it was actually 3 workshops that concluded in August. And question number 1, Fertall Field should stay exactly the way it is now. Nothing should change. So your results are there. We have, if you take the neutrals, disregard them, you've got 2 halves, right? Agree or disagree on basically all these questions. So responses were 27 that agree that it should be the same, and 55% said that they disagreed. Question number 2, Fertall Field is an underutilized asset in the township. We should do better with it. 82% agreed with that statement. 18% disagreed. Number 3, a development strategy for Fertall Field should include the following elements. And you can see by those graphs, there was quite a large spike of a green space with event space, and then a green space, event space, and other commercial elements. Green space, park only, tabulated at 11, and then a rec center and community mixed use green space. So basically a big, large commercial mixed use. So if you just try to theoretically try to cluster a few of those that are headed in one direction, you've got 16.6% that say green space and park only. You've got almost 40% saying green space with an event space. And then you've got almost 44% that's a green space with commercial. Number 5, I support the concept of selling Furthoff Field to a developer that create a project that addresses community needs. 38% agree, 49% disagree. I support the concept of the township keeping Furthoff Field and investing in park development at the expense of taxpayers. 46% agreed with that, 38% disagreed. I would support a special tax levy increasing my taxes to fund a park/green space concept on Furthoff. 52% agree, 38% disagreed. From a community prosperity perspective, what are the most important issues we need to address? Everybody got to tabulate, I think, whatever they felt was most concerning to them. I didn't run the numbers, but you can see by the graphs that clearly vacant buildings is a very important issue in everybody's mind, followed by blighted buildings, and then a third place tie for amenities for young adults, young families, and then addressing our housing issue. Number 10, I'm in favor of implementing a facade grant program to incentivize building business owners to fix up or occupy downtown buildings. 86.5% people said they agreed. 10.4% disagree. I'm in favor of implementing a small business startup grant program to encourage more businesses opening in the downtown. 78% agree, 0.03% disagreed. I'm in favor of implementing a real estate tax abatement program to incentivize building owners to rehab existing buildings or recruit new investors. 75% agreed, 6% disagreed. Are you supportive of the township purchasing vacant or strategic buildings, land, for the future development of the town? 54% agree, 24% disagree. Would you support a special tax levy increase to create a special fund to do this? 48% agree, 33% disagree. The last page, there were some write-in questions, so what you have in the smaller font after the survey results, responses that we collected from question number 4, responses from question number 9, and then question number 15. And the last piece of this is the reason there's only 4 is we went from workshop to a second group of where the workshop drawings sort of clustered. And then the last meeting was only these 4. So we didn't just leave one out. There was only 4 that made the last meeting. And under option A, we had 18 people respond that that was their choice, giving you 38%. Option B, 10 for 21%. Option C, 16 for 33%. And option D only had 4 votes at 8%. And then that final page just shows you sort of how they all came together in more of a graphical version.
Okay. So was this information presented to the EIC board?
No, you're getting it firsthand, as you
Okay.
requested. Actually, several weeks ago, after the board turned and made the Furthoff Field non-disposable, I got specific direction from the EIC that we wouldn't be pursuing this information anymore because it seems like it was a moot point. So since you requested it, I asked them for permission on Thursday to present this, and they said go for it.
I guess I'm not sure why the EIC would grant the township board permission for something that we paid for, that we never received a report on, but.
Well, you never really asked for the report, and if
I think I've asked for
memory.
it. Pretty sure I've asked for it several times, but, okay,
Well, I guess we'll just have to disagree.
okay. All right. Any other questions?
Can you describe the process from the 7 drawings down to the 4? How did the other 3 get eliminated?
So we took a look at what the sub-workshop groups were presented. So yes, there were several that were park only, but there are also a wide variety of mixed-use type of drawings. So Row Engineer and myself sort of got together and, where do they cluster together? And since there was such a wide variety of the potential for commercial or, at least some element of brick and mortar, that's how we got to the 5. They voted, and then the last one we had 4.
All right. Anybody else? Questions? Well,
thank you.
as this is the first time I didn't have an opportunity because it wasn't in the packet to review it, so I guess I will review it and make comments later. Thank you for presenting the information I requested. Any other questions on this information? Okay. Do you have any other updates then?
Nope,
Is there anything going on with the social district?
not that anybody's made me aware of. I've talked to the bar owners, and they think it's a little slow, but they said that, they probably could do a better job of promoting it and maybe increasing activity.
Which bars are currently then approved with their licenses? Just 2?
I
Or did Tate's finish?
thought Tate's did receive theirs, but I guess I can't speak specifically to that. So the office and the E.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Todd?
So when they, because I think the office sold out of all their cups originally at some point.
I gave them resources to, the township provided sort of the first round of cups, and I gave them names and phone numbers for resources if they needed to reorder. So it's, kind of on them as a private business owner to make sure they've got enough cups. And
So they knew, like, in the very beginning, we were presenting, or we were going to provide the start, but then they were going to have to order after that.
correct, yep, and I gave them, they were not obligated to use the resource that we used, but I gave them contact information and encouraged them to place an order if they felt it was in their best interest.
Okay.
There was several people I know that voiced concern, not only I think at a meeting and obviously on social media, about the social district to begin with, about problems or potential problems. Have we had any problems in the social district with the cups or people or anything like that with the police?
I've not been personally made aware of any problems that we've had.
Great, that's great news.
Okay. All right, thank you for the update. Moving on to the superintendent's report. We have first on the wastewater PFAS evaluation project invoices.
All right. Your packet contains a memo from Catherine Nguyen, our regional manager with F&V operations, regarding wastewater PFAS evaluation project services. The Township Board approved 2 separate proposals, one in 2019 and another in 2021. As of today's date, there are 2 outstanding invoices for services rendered by F&V operations that have not been billed for. After a search performed by my office, the Township has only been paying for the mandatory monthly lagoon, influent, and effluent PFAS sampling. I would ask that the Board approve the 2 invoices provided by Ms. Nguyen on behalf of F&V operations for services rendered for PFAS evaluation totaling $27,317.32 to be paid from Fund 590-000-800.100.
Okay, and I believe it was Mr. Westerbarth that wanted the presentation before we approve these, correct?
Yes.
Okay, is he aware that we have this presentation then, that's on the
Yes.
agenda? Okay. Is there any further discussion, or are we ready to approve?
Are we going to keep track of these to try to get the Air Force to repay us for this?
I can do that, most
Okay.
definitely.
Yes, please. With that, I'll make a motion that we approve the expense as noted from the superintendent.
Support?
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Sutton, to approve as submitted. Roll call, please.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to Old Orchard Park, New Holland tractor implement purchase request.
Okay, your packet contains a request from the Parks and Recreation Director, Al Absides, for additional implements for their newly purchased tractor. He is currently requesting a soft cab for winter plowing, a 66-inch front grapple claw, and a 60-inch brush hog for mowing. These items total $6,400 and can be purchased through capital improvement funds.
Okay, is there any questions?
Tammy, refresh my memory, but didn't we just buy a cab for, was it for something else that we, or maybe we were just discussing it?
I think we were just discussing it because at the meeting when we proposed getting the tractor, Jeremy was asking why we didn't have a soft cab on there.
Okay.
So that's
All
your
right,
fault.
maybe that's what it was. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Planted the seed, Jeremy.
Yep.
You know, it's awful nice to have it, and those employees work hard. Let's protect it from the elements just a little bit.
Wasn't the purchase a little bit, was this the one that was a little bit under budget
Yes.
to begin with, so we're okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that was,
Yeah,
okay,
this
we were
replaced the
talking
truck.
about it, okay.
This
Right.
is also replacing the plow truck that they requested that was way overpriced.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussions, or is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the 3 implements requested for the recently purchased tractor for Old Orchard Park, that being a brush hog, 60-inch brush hog at $2,500, a 66-inch front grapple claw at $2,500, and a soft cab for winter for $1,400, for a total of $6,400 to be paid from Fund 218-000-984.000 from the capital improvement.
Okay, any support for that?
I will support that. Spencer.
There's a motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Spencer to approve as requested. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to the proposed fire department emergency call response requests.
Okay, as some of you may or may not know, the previous township board voted at a board meeting dated February 11th, 2019, to no longer have our fire department respond to down power line calls. The report, letter, and meeting minutes approved are in your meeting packet for your review. After recent discussions with Consumers Energy and the 911 director, Mike Eller, I thought it pertinent to have this revisited along with 2 other emergency services we currently aren't providing. As you can see in the email correspondence with Mr. Eller in the board packet, Oscoda Township Fire Department currently does not respond to down power lines, personal injury accidents, or lift assists. With the assistance of the fire and police chief, I believe policies and procedures can be created to provide these services to our community. And I am asking for 3 different actions this evening. The first action would be to approve the Oscoda Township Fire Department to respond to down power lines, personal injury accidents, and lift assists. The second would be to approve the superintendent to work with the township's attorney, police chief, and fire chief to create policies and procedures for responding to these 3 items. And I would also ask that the board approve the superintendent and the clerk's office to create an invoicing packet along with a policy to streamline billing to utilities and insurance companies for both fire and police.
Okay, so, right, obviously, if we don't approve one, we're not going to need the other 2.
Right.
Right, okay. And we're not going to start responding until we have the policies and procedures in place.
Correct.
Correct, okay. Right,
I was just, it was the previous board that I was on that we opted not to respond, partially because of our fire chief. I would just wonder if we could hear from Chief McGregor, his thoughts on this before we move forward. All 3 of the issues.
Okay. Good evening. I think there's room to make some change in these. I think, and Rick has done a phenomenal job with what they've done so far from where we're at then and where we're at now. But I think it's got to be a slow process. As far as the consumer power issue, the blue sky section that he's talking about is really changed, and I think that's something we can live with. The catastrophic area, what you got to understand is if consumers' energy is having, or consumers' power is having, or consumers' energy is having a catastrophic situation, so is the police and fire department.
Right.
Okay, so when one of those storms come through, the police are tied up on accidents, people trapped in cars, trees falling on houses, so is the fire department, and many, many fire calls are generated from those. So, and if we get one of those catastrophic situations, we could have 8, 10, 12 calls within an hour. And if we're are setting on those, we've assumed the liability for those, but now we're not available to do what we're supposed to be doing. I think one of the firemen said it pretty good the other day. We're getting dispatched to a situation, we're not taking any fire equipment. Why are we being dispatched then? We're actually become security guards. And I know it needs to be done. I know the dangers involved with it. But the fire department, and maybe more so my position, is to keep the liability from the township, the expense to a minimum, provide a professional and safe service. And I think the blue sky power line down, that should not be an issue. I think we can work that out. There's guys that actually won't mind setting on them the time it takes. And it has, the times have changed. The time frames have changed, so it's a lot easier. The catastrophic one, I think we got to put some time into, because when they're busy, we're busy. We need to take care of our own. And I don't know how we can work that, but I think we should at least look into it. But the catastrophic one, I think we need to go slow on.
So you think that we need to have a tiered response or a tiered policy that gives the fire department the ability to create a priority on a specific call over another one for the catastrophic areas? Would that be?
The problem with those, and I think Rick will back me up, is the same with his people. Once you have people on the scene, you assume that liability there. So if you get there, let's say in a simple down wire, now we get a commercial business on fire downtown, we can't leave that. Because anything that would happen there down the township's got the liability on it. Our average response by firefighters is 15 to every run. That's our average throughout the year. You know, we may have 25, 28 people on there, but because of illness, work, vacations, we average 15 people at every run, and that's pretty much minimum what it takes to handle anything. Now, we start taking away from that, and then we get something catastrophic, we have a big issue. So I understand the situation. Consumers Energy has done a phenomenal job from 3 years ago, and I think the blue sky problems we can all address, but the catastrophic ones brings us into a catastrophic situation too. So we need to really look at that, because our obligation is, if we're promoting to our people that we have a fire department out there, and they call us one night and we don't have enough people to send, there's a big lawsuit right there.
Right.
I
guess I would just point out that I think we're right now just discussing down power lines overall, but the policies and procedures will be talked about more in depth, and you could maybe drill down into those concerns more.
That's what the plan is.
Yeah.
It was suggested by Mr. Eller to maybe have only two people go, you know, if we can work with the fire department, have only two people respond. That way it's not tying up the entire fire department sitting on a down power line. And they can even use, we talked about possibly using even a DPW vehicle to go sit, because consumers will pay. Actually,
So should we maybe add into the work group, maybe represent, Mike, if he can sit in on those discussions, since they're the ones who handle the calls?
Yep, we can do that.
Okay.
The problem being, just historically, is when the pager goes off, 30-some people get paged. How do we know which two are going?
Right.
There has to be some way to work that out. There probably is.
Right, yeah.
Because there's only, I'll be honest with you, there's a core group of firemen that will sit on those. The rest say, that's not what I hired onto this thing for. Yeah. I've got a business or I've got a family. I'm not a security guard,
Right.
you know. But I do still understand the problem that comes as a result of these down power lines. It needs to be addressed. But I think there's some room for the blue sky. When the catastrophic ones, you know, maybe consumers can have their own catastrophic team that's enacted during that situation to take care of their problems, we take care of our problems. I don't know. We need to
Right.
sit down and talk about it. But I would hate to go into this thing really hastily. I think there's some common ground we can reach, and I think we can fix most of these problems. I'm very confident in that.
Al, the second action item kind of addresses what you're talking about, having the superintendent work with the township's attorney, yourself, and the police chief, and with 911, like Ann's suggesting, to create the policies and procedures to responding. Do you think you can get all those things worked out in that time? Because it's not, like you said, it's not going to be a fast process.
No, it won't be a fast, some of it will be.
Yeah.
You know, the issue about responding to personal injury accidents, I can address that really quick for you, and I think Chief David would support 100% because, you know, I've been a police officer for 43 years, 30 of them here, and it's always been the process here in Oscoda is a personal injury accident can be anywhere from a broken finger, cut on the forehead. That's what it's dispatched on. So let's just say we get dispatched on a personal injury accident because that's what it's classified as. We get there, and it's always been the police. When I was there, same thing. Why add 20-some more vehicles to a scene like that? Right now, and I think it's very adequate, anytime there's a rollover, an entrapment, or a request by the police department, by all means, we go. That's always been that. So things like that, I think, just have to be put in policy.
Okay.
I would hate to see us responding to every personal injury accident. I can tell you why other departments do it, because they get paid to do that. Our department is a busy department, and our guys aren't thinking about, oh, we get paid, so we should be dispatched to it. Other departments have the time to do that. Our runs are way up this year. I don't know where that's coming from, but we have been extremely busy this year. Our numbers are exceeding last year already right now. So it's not the guys don't want to take it just to get paid.
So there's never a time when an officer calls for the fire department where you guys say, we're not going to that.
Never. It's
Never one
been that
time.
way. Never been that way.
Good deal.
So again, I think working with the police chief in that group, I think we can put that into a policy that may meet those expectations. So I think it's a good thing we're doing it, but we need to go slow with it. I don't know if you want to touch on the lift assist. We can basically do that if you want me to just mention it. It does need to be addressed because we used to be able to rely on the first responders. Since they've been dissolved, there's no one to back the ambulance up on a lift assist. But again, there has to be some safeguards put in because I've worked with these people many times, and they have some people, quite a few people that physically can't do the job they're doing. So when they pull in the driveway, they'll automatically send, hey, send the fire department here to give us a hand. I think they're putting in it's got to be a priority one patient. We're doing that right now. I've already told them we would do that right now. But to run on every time somebody says, oh, we need some help here, I think there's got to be some guidelines to work with because it's a thing that can be abused very easily.
I think that's a reasonable statement.
So there's a lot of expertise that will be involved with this, and I think that we can come up with something that will take care of everything. But again, our responsibility is to the township for fire services, and we
are
can't
allowed
lose
to.
that.
We are allowed to bill the homeowner's insurance for a lift assist, are we not?
Well, I don't know who you bill on that one. If you bill EMS because they're asking for you, I don't know. We have to get into that.
It's the insurance company, the person's insurance.
So you guys,
Yes.
it sounds to me like there's a lot of things to be worked out here.
Right,
And I'm
that's
glad
the-
that you're going to be part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, thus Tammy asking for permission, so, okay.
We'll have to, the policy, I mean, we'll have to set it up. I don't want any of the officers setting on down power lines because we get a situation, they got to be available to handle the situation. But we've got a young, aggressive, new group of firefighters in there that they're eager to do anything. Give them another 10 years, we might be addressing this again. But we've probably got the people that can fix this problem right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So,
A side note, they also pay for police as well, because the police officers go to gas leaks. So does the fire department, so they will pay for police as well.
Okay.
And the thing with the gas leaks versus the power lines, the gas leaks, we get 1 or 2 of them a year. They're very minimal, but I still agree. If we're paying for one, we should be paying for the other. There's no doubt there at all.
Yeah.
But again, I want to applaud Rick for what you've done. I've seen what you've done, and it's remarkable, and it was needed. And I think there's some good work that can come out of that for us, so.
And Rich mentioned that he could have someone from his office or staff come and do some training for your
We used to
guys.
do that, yeah. We used to do that a lot.
Would
Sure.
you still want to take
Oh,
advantage
sure.
of that?
Sure.
Is there some, because, you see a down line, not necessarily a hot line.
Well, you don't know.
But there's no way to know.
You always go on the assumption the gun's always loaded,
Right.
you know?
So
Yeah,
you go
so
to test it, Bill.
And I'm wondering if.
some of them are obvious and some of them aren't.
Part of that training could be detecting whether or not it's even a power line. Maybe it's a cable, cable TV line or something. It's
Oh,
not.
yeah, we can usually determine that pretty easily, yeah.
Because then you guys don't have to sit there if it's.
Right.
If it's not.
That's pretty easy.
Okay.
Depending if it's hot or not, that's a hard question to ask.
Right.
And I think consumers basically wants us not to make that decision, right? Just leave them
Great.
alone.
I think Tammy
So-
has something to add.
When speaking with our risk management representative, Tokyo Marine, they do also have hot sticks that we can purchase. They're about $350. That could tell you if it's hot or if it's a deadline.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
All right. Sounds like you're going to have a lot of fun in this little committee.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can see that
Yeah.
you're excited.
The hot stick idea, I'm not too excited with. I don't like electricity.
Just leave them alone.
So,
Yeah,
so
that's-
you do
But we got
want,
some rookies, so.
yeah,
it'll
you
be
want it in a 3-step approval process,
It
Tammy?
can
or-
be all in the same motion.
All in the same motion?
Just as long as those three
Okay.
things are.
All right, well, I would like to make a motion that we approve the Oscoda Township Fire Department to respond to down power lines, personal injury accidents, and lift assists. And also authorize the superintendent to work with the parties identified in her report, I guess. Do you want me to identify them out loud, or just in the report?
That's the 911 director.
And add the 911 director as well. And then also create an invoicing policy, I guess, for how we're going to handle billing utility companies and insurance companies for the services that we're going to start adding.
Would you amend your motion to include that they're not going to start responding to those, to the said situations until the policies are in place?
Sure.
Oh, I beat Jamie to the punch, yeah!
I will.
Because it
I will
almost sounded that
include
way, and I was going to ask the same question.
Yeah, well,
we
I
just
already
talked
said
about
that to
that,
start with.
I
Yeah.
know she was trying to think about all the things that have to be said right now, and
Yeah.
that probably just slipped by.
Slip by. All right, so yeah, I would amend to include that. Obviously, you're not going to respond until we have policies in place.
Then supported I shall.
All right. So the motion is by Richards, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you again, Rich, for coming. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to the Art Walk banner purchase request.
Okay, during the budget planning approval process, the EIC director requested $40,000 be incorporated into the 2022 budget for public art as part of the Place Leap strategies provided by consultants Place and Main. These funds were ultimately approved as part of Fund 236-266-801.000. Your packet contains a request for the purchase of a 4th mural to be installed on the US 23 side of the Township Hall. The cost of materials and installation should not exceed $4,300 based on the estimate provided. While the budget has been approved, expending the funds requires Township Board approval.
Okay, sorry, I was just trying to, I don't know why my bookmarks aren't like letting me just click to that section.
What do you want to do?
It's
Add a
another
fourth banner
mural.
up on the fire barn. We've got one there now, and, there's plenty of room to add probably 2 more banners to it, but we're asking for 1. We had a contest that wrapped up maybe a month ago, and we'd like to take that winner and make a banner out of it. So I asked for the not to exceed 4,300 because we kind of ran into that problem where the quote to the time, everything got really finally approved. The gas and contracting kind of escalated, so I had to come back and ask for more money. I mean, we should come in under 4,000 pretty easy based on the estimates that you have, but I thought to cover myself, I'd ask for not to exceed.
Okay. Do you have there's not an image, we don't know what this piece of artwork is going to be?
You do not? No, it's a surprise.
Okay. All right, is there any questions besides mine?
Yeah, I asked Sharon if she had a clean copy for me, and she didn't have it in time for the packet. And then I haven't heard from her since, so here we are. But it is out on Facebook,
Okay.
so you could definitely find a photo of it.
Well, I'd make a motion to approve, you said amount not to exceed 4,300 for the banner purchase coming from the account specified that Tammy's going to tell us.
236-266-801.000.
Like a boss.
All right, is there support for that?
Oh, yeah.
There's a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Sutton to approve as requested. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Thank you. All right, I don't know, my computer's not behaving.
Can you see that far?
Yeah. Okay, moving on to resolutions. The first resolution is resolution number 2022-24. It's the resolution for charitable gaming license.
So the Sacred Heart Church is going to be doing some gambling, nonprofit-wise.
Like it.
And oddly enough, these are just starting to pop up where the township needs to do resolutions for them to be able to have these events. So
Is it for the poker room, or is it, what's it for?
it's for an event at the American Legion.
Have we always had this?
No, these are new.
used to.
I have
Okay.
never
So
seen
are they
these.
unable
That's
to
some in the
obtain a
past.
license through
We
the
have?
state of
Yeah.
Michigan?
Yes.
They're unable to?
No, this is how they get that
Right. they go-
permission, is by resolution through the township.
And then they turn it into the state to get their charitable license.
How have they
Well,
been
maybe
doing
they're
it up
not.
until now?
Maybe the other ones are,
There's some that they've done before. We've
Yeah.
done some before in the
Registered for your
past.
license, you have to maintain it every year. So a lot of your charitable organizations that have been doing it already have been maintaining that gaming license. But if you let that lapse or you don't have one, this is how you do it.
Most
Start that
churches don't
process.
gamble.
Or if it's just a one-time,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
yeah, it's for the poker room probably. But, right, they just lapse there. So at one point in time, everybody that has a poker room, hosts a poker room, had to do
Had to
this.
do this.
Yeah, because the Lions Club has done
Before.
that for years. We've run the poker room. and
So we had to
get
pass a
license from the
resolution at the
state.
township level to allow
I
the.
kind
allow
of
the-
remember it years ago,
Because they'll be
yes.
gambling in your township and it's a special license.
What resolution was that? And was there one for each individual entity? Or was it just for the poker room?
I have no idea. This is
I'm
the
kind of
first
lost
for
here. I
me.
don't understand what's this. So you're saying that so that the poker room's been going on for years?
Right.
Right?
Yep, they have a
We've all
license.
probably
Yep.
worked at the poker room for one event or another.
Yep.
Now, all of a sudden, we have a new entity that wants to partake in the poker room, and they have to have a township resolution to do so? And I'm asking, have all of the other entities that have partaken in that, the Lions, the Freemasons, anybody else that has done one of those things had to go and get a resolution from the
I
township?
believe they did, I remember, yes.
I know that they
Yeah.
some have. I can't say every single
Right.
one of them have,
No,
but
you
I
don't.
know we've approved them in the
They're
past.
not going to write it in my blood or anything.
No, I
Yeah.
just, I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there it is.
I'm just thinking that the Catholic Church probably doesn't,
Gamble
right, that's what
often.
this is, right?
Yeah, I just, no.
I don't think they have a lot of.
I don't think they've done
I don't
this
think they do a lot of
before.
poker rooms.
Well, I just remember from being, part of the Chamber of Commerce and other entities that have partaken in the poker room, and I don't ever remember hearing anything about the township being required to vote on a resolution for them to partake, so I was just questioning
I think
that.
we
It's not
have.
at the poker
I
room.
do remember.
It's not the poker room?
It's
Are they
not
gonna
at
do
the
it on
poker
premise,
room.
or, you said at the
It's at the
American
Legion.
Well, that's where the poker room is.
Yeah.
I thought that was,
No,
No.
moved
No,
it.
they moved it.
They moved, they left the Vista a long time ago.
Yeah.
They've
Okay.
been going back and forth between the VFW
And the
and
Legion.
the Legion.
It's pretty much at the
Yep.
Legion now.
Right.
But it's pretty much in the Legion in the back room.
right.
Used to be the
Not that I
bowling.
ever play there,
Used to be the
but
bowling
I might know
alley.
for
Yeah.
personal knowledge. So, yeah. Okay. I make a motion, we approve Resolution 2022-24.
Support.
Okay, there's a motion by Richards, support by McGuire. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. The next is Resolution 2022-25. This resolution is to rescind Resolution Number 2005-30.
So per attorney legal opinion, the recommendation has been that the township rescind Resolution 2005-30 because the township should not be waiving fees for any of our properties or buildings.
So even if, like, I think in the past, we've had meetings with, like, RAB things, we can't waive those as well?
Well,
I mean, we
those
should
are
be charging for
community
those?
meetings. I think
They
it's
are.
when it comes to,
I mean, we're part of that, though, so, I mean, our
Nonprofit.
board is in there. I mean, I suppose we could
No,
charge
we're
our,
not.
should we charge our board for use of our properties?
Our
I
board
mean-
isn't there. Our whole board isn't there.
No, but it's an official
That's my question.
township function. I mean, we're talking, I
It's
think this is
not.
more
Not a
along the
township
lines of,
It's not a
hey,
township function.
It's an Air
the
Force.
RAB?
It's an
Yeah.
Air Force.
Oh, I
Air
shouldn't
Force
say, I shouldn't say it's,
function, yeah.
but it's in the best interest of the town. But it's not a nonprofit. I think that what they're talking about here is the nonprofits. And the people that are coming in because, like the Furtaw Field just got rented by the Masons, and they asked if we could waive the fee, and they were told, no, we can't, because that's technically a donation to your lodge, and we as a township cannot do that. And that's where this is coming from, is that it looks like a donation. It might not be, we don't think it is, but it looks like it, and it technically probably is, because just like if you get credit card debt forgiven, that counts as on your income. So if you get this fee forgiven, then that counts as a donation to your cause, and we as a township are probably not supposed to do that. That's where I think it's coming from. As far as what Ann's talking about and having township sanctioned meetings there, it's a good question.
Just asking the question. I mean, we don't need to,
Well, I would move to
Whatever,
postpone
but-
this until our next regularly scheduled board meeting so that the attorney may look
she
into
did
that.
send out an opinion that
She did
everyone
send
was
out an
supposed to
opinion.
read.
But did it include Ms. Richards' point? Because I don't think it did.
I can't discuss that.
Fair enough.
I think what the attorney is indicating is that anything we would charge a fee, if the township, if this board wants to hold a meeting at Warrior Pavilion, we don't have to waive a fee. We're not going to charge ourselves for using it.
right.
Right.
Anybody else that wants to use it should be paying the fee. We can't waive that fee.
Right, but
And
does
if
that
it's
include
Air
the
Force-
EIC
If it's a
board when-
community
No, they're part of
meeting with
the
the Air Force,
township board.
let the Air Force pay the fee.
Right, but if it's an entity that's completely outside the township and doesn't, and we're not, and the township isn't involved in any way, then I agree with that. But like the EIC wants to have meetings where they bring in training for, from outside, for planning and zoning and all that stuff. They want to bring all these trainers here and have that training done at the Warrior Pavilion. Are we going to charge the EIC for?
There are, well, why would we? They're part of us.
There we go, we've got yes and no.
They're a subset.
You're all getting lost. What it is we
They're a
have to be
subset of the
accountable to the
board.
taxpayers for property that people
But they're-
rent to
people are
use.
paying.
If
I understand.
You're using
People are
it for
paying
a
to
town
use the-
hall,
get the training.
community meeting, subcommittee meetings. That is government use of our own property, citizen use, but when you're
Is the RAB
renting
meeting government use?
the Warrior or anything else, you're doing that at a profit, and if you waive it, like you, Jeremy Spencer, go to rent
Right.
that very same thing, what makes you different from an organization in our town?
Nothing.
You're gonna rent it for a
It would
wedding, what if they wanna rent it to do cornhole or whatever, they're gonna make money for that nonprofit. Part of that is the cost of renting that field. We have to collect those funds to be accountable to the taxpayers, because we're utilizing taxpayer property.
So we're gonna need some,
That's what it comes
So
down
you
to.
would
is
just
I'll
have the
reread, I'll
attorney-
reread the opinion and see
Yeah.
maybe I can answer my own question.
I'm gonna have to as well, because.
Because it was a
didn't-
pretty
didn't-
lengthy opinion, so. So I make a motion that we approve Resolution 2022-25 based on our attorney's recommendation.
Right, we can revisit individual scenarios if we come across something.
And
So
run it
I
by the
support
attorney.
that.
Okay,
Did you support, Jamie?
she did.
Yeah.
So there's a motion by Richards, support by Ms. McGuire, to approve as recommended by our attorney, Resolution 2022-25. Roll call.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes,
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to the other section. Number 1 is police officer change and status request from chief.
So you have a memo from Chief David recommending that Officer Robbie Klink be transferred from probationary to seniority status. This probably should have been done in March, but it wasn't brought to my attention until recently. So it should have been up in March, but he's been accommodated for since.
I was going to say, so he's
Yes.
been made,
that show.
This is just the official
okay,
movement of
Great.
probationary to seniority.
okay. Any questions then?
I'll move to support Chief David's recommendation that Officer Klink be transferred from probationary employment to senior status, or to seniority status, effective 3/29/22.
Support, Sutton?
I would also add that we apologize for the delay in the making it official, so. If we would you,
I would
Amend
amend
your
my
motion
motion
to
to
include
include
that?
the apology, yes.
thank you. All right, roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes,
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Then scheduling of the first budget work session. I think we'll just skip over this. Just kidding.
I would have put some dates in, but you guys are, excuse the expression, herding cats.
I use that expression a lot, so.
So I was hoping that you all could take a look at your schedules. It doesn't have to be this evening, but if everybody could take a look and see what they have available within the next 2 weeks would be preferable.
Well, especially because we're missing 2 board members right now, so
Right.
there's really
2
no
weeks?
point in, yeah.
The next
Within
2
the
weeks?
next 2 weeks, yes.
No, she said get back to you within the next 2 weeks, or just schedule
No,
something.
I would like to
Available.
schedule it within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, gotcha.
Available.
All right.
We
Okay,
are
no.
getting close to the deadline that we won't meet the time frame.
Correct. Well,
If we
she
don't
did
do
send
it
out a preliminary,
yes.
like a month or so ago, didn't you?
Preliminary.
Yeah, I remember
Well,
seeing
budget.
something about that, asking for the, starting to talk about the
Yeah.
budget.
Oh, yes.
It's been brought up a couple times.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we may have,
make that
you may just have to set the meeting, and those that can make it, can make it. And
Well, as long as the board agrees with that being okay, I'm okay with that, but
I'll email you
everybody's
tomorrow.
got different schedules, everybody
Right.
works, so.
How about next Monday, the 19th?
I can tell you I'm out of town,
be-
starting Wednesday, so the 14th, the 21st.
I'll be at Fall Conference for the Treasurers Institute.
I could do it in the evening, Mr. Palmer.
Okay.
Evening's going to be best for me.
So in the next day or two,
Yeah.
preferably tomorrow, email Tammy.
Please.
Okay. Availability between now and, you said 2 weeks, so that would be like the 26th is our next board meeting.
Yes.
So you want to know availability between now and the 26th?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
And you'll email Mr. Westerbarth and Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then that concludes our agenda. Moving on to the second public comment section of the agenda. This one, you do not have to have a comment card filled out, and it does not need to be on an agenda item. I'm going to start on my far right-hand side. Anybody in the first row wish to make a public comment? Okay. Anybody in the middle row? Okay, raise your hand. Come on up. Yep, come on up, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Galen Brainowell. I'm the interim director for the Oscoda Chamber of Commerce. And I want to start by thanking the township staff for their help, especially Tammy Klein and Melinda Morgan and Bill Hamlin for their help with Art on the Beach, and so far with the Paul Bunyan Festival, which is this weekend. And so I wanted to make sure everybody knew September 16th through the 18th at Furtaw Field. Starting at 4 o'clock, we'll have the carnival, family fun time, amusements, carnival rides. We'll have food vendors there too. We'll start the chainsaw carving competition for the quick carve that night too. The main competition for the carvers will start on Saturday, which also is when we have the beard competition. And registration is 3 o'clock on Saturday, and I see a couple of our members here that might want to take part in that. We will have music. Excuse me, WKJC will be there for a remote broadcast. We'll also have music by Dan Christopher and KJ Somerville. On Sunday, we'll have Ron and Daisy Fryer. There's a cornhole tournament on Saturday. There's also a sawdust dig coin treasure hunt sponsored by Northland Area Federal Credit Union. The cornhole is sponsored by Kalita Air. We're fortunate we have some great sponsors this year. The main sponsor is the Oscoda Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. We also have Consumers Energy, Alpena Alcona Credit Union, the Oscoda Area Schools, Justin Griffith and the Consumers Energy Asable Canoe Marathon, who's providing the wood for the carvers, Tawas Bay Insurance, Napa Auto Parts, To the Moon and Back, Hopcroft Law, JK Promotions, Real Estate One, and Vinnie's Do It Best Hardware. So I just want to invite everybody. It's going to be a great weekend. Children 12 and under are free. 12 and over 12, it's only $5 for the button for the whole weekend, and the weather looks promising. So I hope we see everybody there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else in the middle section? No? Moving on to the third section. Come on down, Rick. Sorry, it sounded like The Price is Right for a second.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to this survey, again from Warrior Pavilion, those were 3 separate dates that we were there for hours doing different things. And to be presented with survey results like that, I thought this was going to be more of a presentation and not just reading off survey results, or, you know. I'm still not understanding why it took 14 months to add up these numbers. And during that time, if you really cared what the public thought about Furtaw, during that whole time, there was LOIs that were going through for Furtaw. You guys actually did, you accepted one, but you voted against it on the container homes, not to have those there, but you did that without knowing what the public opinion was. So again, I'm just kind of confused as to if this really mattered about what the residents thought, why did it take this long, and why did things still continue as far as LOIs and voting on whether or not certain developers would be approved or not to build housing or whatever on it. The three sketches that are in here, like I said, they keep getting eliminated. I would still ask to know why those two from the first meeting that I was a part of, other people were a part of, did not make it to the second meeting to even get a chance to be looked at by anybody else to be voted on. And lastly, the ones that do have the condos on it and the ones that are presented as a third is going to be for the condos or mixed use, whatever, and the other 2/3 would remain with the township community. At the last Warrior Pavilion meeting, I asked the question, what would stop the board 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, from selling another third of it, or the other 2/3 of it? And the question, and the response I got was nothing. So, for people to go through this one and say, well, we're gonna utilize 1/3 of it for housing or mixed use, and the other 2/3 for the public in the township, but in all reality, at the next meeting, if you wanted to, you could sell another third of it. There's nothing that stops that from happening. So there's no security by telling the township people that 2/3 of that field will remain for public use and under the township, when a vote could change that and sell another third next meeting and sell the last third a year from now. So I just wanted to point that out. That's all I got for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Okay, that concludes the public comment section of the meeting then. Now moving on to board comments. Board members have any comments? Start. No?
I'll go. I just wanted to toss out a quick apology to Rick. My last comment there was not meant to detract from the progress that you have made, and I can see in the numbers that Consumers Energy is making an effort and doing an exquisite job in that. So I apologize for making light of the poll numbering. I just want to toss that out there. So you're welcome. Thanks for coming down and talking to us. Rich. And I messed up your name. I'll toss that into my apology as well.
I'm going to blame that on Al. I'm going to blame that on Chief.
I'm sorry.
So I think that's why it went in your head, but yeah, that's okay.
Okay, me?
Great, yep.
Summer taxes are due September 14th.
Fun sucker.
I know, sorry about that. But yeah, so you got a couple more days. We do accept postmarks if anybody out there needs to mail it. As long as it's mailed and postmarked by the 14th, we will accept it without penalty. If you have any questions or want to know whether your tax bill has been paid by your mortgage company, or make sure that you did pay it and you didn't forget, give us a call, 739-3211, extension 320 or 321, or our direct number is 739-7471.
Okay, Josh, did you have anything?
Oh, thank you. You're the only one still here. As I want to say thank you to our presenters, but most of them left when they were done. So thank you for all your work. I appreciate it. It's been a lot getting all that together in your email. I went through that, so that's a lot to put together. So I'll be able to get everything for the chief that he needs.
All right, okay.
And come on down to Furtaw Field this weekend
right.
for the Paul Bunyan Festival.
Yeah, so, yeah, I guess I would just note, I am out of town, going out west to see my mom, but I wish the festival all the best of luck. Is it the same, is it Schmidt Amusement, or I know, didn't they sell out and it's? Okay. 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 All right, well, it does look like good weather, so I hope it goes well. But, and you have a good group of volunteers, or you're still hitting the streets? Okay, all right. I guess I just would make a comment in regard to Rick. You had concerns about what Furtaw Field, I mean, we did make it officially non-disposable several months ago. So, I mean, I guess That being said, that all happened when we were getting the, you know, the LOIs, and we made a decision there. So, not to say that that couldn't be changed, like you just indicated, but at this point in time, we are not, you know, it is not a disposable property, so. And I think that Jamie wanted to add something.
You just reminded me, I know I brought it up at a few board meetings ago at board comment, that a citizen had reached out to me about the disposition of property that the board had voted on, and then there's a new updated one that the board did not vote on, and Tammy was going to look into that, and I asked her again about it, so she's checking on it.
Okay, all right, so with that, I mean, again, I don't think that probably calms all your fears, but at this point in time, we have decided that Furtaw Field is non-disposable. So with that, I would take a motion to adjourn. Okay, it is 9:32. Thank you.